You're listening to In Clear Focus, a unique perspective on the business of advertising, produced weekly by Big Eye. Hello, I'm your host, Adrian Tennant, VP of Insights at Big Eye, an audience-focused, creative-driven, full-service advertising agency. We're based in Orlando, Florida, but serve clients across the United States and beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Over the past several decades, thanks to improved diagnostic and therapeutic options, healthcare has done much to improve life expectancy and quality of life. And the development of new diagnostic procedures, therapies, drugs, and medical devices is something the US has traditionally excelled at. But within the next 5 years, the cost of healthcare here is predicted to reach 20% of GDP. So technological solutions and new approaches to delivery are of interest to many health systems. Managing systemic change is hard, especially when it comes to creating a culture of innovation. Joining me here in the studio today is someone with hands-on experience of managing just this kind of challenge. Michael Schmidt is the Managing Director of Strategic Innovations at Orlando Health. A network of community and specialty hospitals, Orlando Health is Central Florida's 5th largest employer, with more than 20,000 employees and more than 3,000 affiliated physicians. Michael has built the Orlando Health Foundry, which develops internal ideas and concepts into startup businesses or commercialized products and helps to launch them across Orlando Health and the broader healthcare industry. Welcome to In Clear Focus, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Mike, your title is Managing Director of Strategic Innovations. How do you define innovation?
People define innovation, and specifically in healthcare, a lot of different ways. The definition that has become my favorite, it's actually from a partner of ours, Healthbox. It's based in Chicago. And I love it because it's so simple. It's invention adopted.
Why is innovation needed within an organization like Orlando Health?
So we're at a really interesting time. 2018 was actually our 100th birthday as an organization. So kind of at the same time celebrating the past and everything that we've accomplished and what it means to the Central Florida community, but also really looking to the future in the next 100 years and how do we set ourselves up as a hospital system caring for a broader community to make sure that we're meeting the needs that the community has, but also making sure that in the increasingly competitive healthcare landscape, we are well prepared to serve those that that we've set out to serve.
So, Mike, how did you first arrive at the idea that has now become Orlando Health Foundry?
Yeah, so we've had some fits and starts in terms of a formal innovation program. And so for a healthcare system of our size, that was really a gap. And so not quite 5 years ago, David Strong became our CEO, and he brought with him from his previous organization a number of other senior leaders that now they formed the senior leadership team for Orlando Health. And I think pretty quickly realized that an innovation program is an excellent way to engage the workforce, especially the frontline clinicians and physicians who are directly caring for patients, to not only make sure that we are tapping into the workforce to get the best insights and feedback on where change needs to happen, where product evolution needs to happen, where we need to change our approach, but also to make sure that the workforce feels they have an outlet for those ideas when they come up with something, whether it's a new product purchase recommendation or a completely new idea that someone's come up with that solves some problems. And so we collectively kind of surveyed a number of senior folks across the organization and kind of asked the questions, what would a good innovation program look like? And how should we include people from across the healthcare system to help us drive this forward?
Excellent. So in establishing Orlando Health Foundry, what challenges did you face?
So I think one of the biggest challenges for me was initially I was a one-person team. And with such a large organization that spread out so much, it has been a bit of a challenge to get the word out, to make sure that people know that we have the Foundry program, and then kind of taking it a step beyond that. What is this program? How does it work? How can people participate, engage with it? What types of ideas are we looking for? Things like that. So it's been a bit of a learning process. One of the best things we do each fall is we hold workshops at each of the hospitals. And so anybody's able to come. They're a few hours long, so it gives people a chance to kind of settle in, ask me questions, kind of get an overview of what the program looks like, but then get kind of real-time feedback on any ideas that they might be working on. And so, I always take a step back and say, how did you guys hear about this first? And are there better ways that we can communicate, to make sure that we're reaching everybody who needs to hear about this program, that has ideas? And so I've gotten lots of great insights and feedback over time.
Is the program open only to Orlando Health employees and partner physicians, or is it open to everybody?
That's a great question. So the way we've decided to set up our program is to focus both on the internal and external environment. So the Foundry specifically serves our internal constituents, so employees, which we call team members, and our physicians. And so the Foundry is where they can bring ideas for new products or services that Orlando Health can develop and then commercialize and spin out after using them across our system. For our external focus, we actually have a dedicated investment fund, which many large healthcare systems do now. And so we do direct investing into healthcare startups whose products and services we like to use.
Right. So how do people with new product or service ideas generally engage with the Foundry? What does the process look like?
It usually starts at the workshops. And so the program does run on an annual cycle. And so we'll do an internal kind of marketing campaign around the program, invite people to attend the workshops. And so that's kind of the first chance for them to dip their toes in the water. And oftentimes people, they sign up, but they're not really sure what to expect. And initially they're a little hesitant to share the idea. But I think once they understand that my team is here just to support them, they are my customers. My job is to help them succeed and help them take the next right step with their ideas. It's always really encouraging to see how the conversation kind of unfolds.
So what can you tell us about the framework that you've developed to help innovators either define or refine those initial concepts that they bring to you?
Yeah, so the Foundry program itself, the actual accelerator portion, is about a 2-month sprint. So most of the ideas that are brought to us are very early stage. It's kind of a sketch on a piece of paper or a PowerPoint presentation as to here's how this thing could work if we were to build it. So we realized that people were pretty early in the process in terms of developing a concept. And so what we've established, and this is kind of HealthBox's framework, is a series of 4 modules. So we build an internal team. If we're building a medical device, we'll bring someone from clinical engineering. We'll get a frontline clinician who's actually going to use the device. We'll get someone from our IT team, just to make sure that we have a well-rounded perspective as we're developing this project, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And so that group stays together throughout the process. And so the first thing we do is kind of take a step back from the product or the idea, and we really start to diagnose and take apart the problem that they're trying to solve. We say you have to fall in love with the problem first. That's the first big step. And so oftentimes the innovator that's brought the idea forward hasn't fully thought through what exactly their idea or their product is fixing. And so we start to kind of pull it apart piece by piece and say, look at who exactly is this problem affecting? What else is happening further down the line? If we don't fix it today, what happens? How urgent is it? What is it costing Orlando Health, or what is it doing potentially to patient outcomes if we're not solving this problem? And so most of the time, once we've gotten that part kind of on paper and thought through fully, we realize that at least some aspects of the new idea don't address part of that problem. So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of reframe, make sure that the idea addresses the problem that we've diagnosed, that sort of a thing. And so once we get past that, then start to, kind of get into product design, start to look at the market landscape, where would this fit, just to make sure that we're carving out a niche for ourselves where we feel we could have some success.
Got it. So moving to market fit, how do you typically determine a concept's commercial viability and validate the market opportunity beyond just Orlando Health's needs?
Yeah, so the review process for the ideas that are brought to us is actually a bit of a lengthy process. So of all the ideas that are submitted, we review those internally, and I have a group of about 30 frontline clinicians, physicians, leaders that review all the ideas. And so what we look for collectively is which of the ideas really is something unique that's not on the market, or if it's similar to something on the market, do we think that we could build this in a different way or approach it differently that could impact, first and foremost, how we deliver healthcare at Orlando Health? And then would that appeal to the broader market? So we have a lot of discussion around the merits of pursuing each of these things. Some really interesting ideas aren't pursued because of what the market landscape looks like. Medical devices specifically have a very long runway for development. Going through the FDA is not easy. It's very costly. So we pick and choose the opportunities to pursue those types of projects based on how successful we think we could be. And then I always make sure that we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves. If we develop an idea that at the end of the day really just impacts how we do things at Orlando Health and helps us either improve our outcomes, decrease cost, reduce length of stay, the important metrics for a hospital, that's fine. If it ends up getting to the market and is successful, that's kind of a bonus. Just to make sure that we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves. The average amount of time from the start of the program to when we anticipate something hitting the market is probably between 2 to 4 years, depending on what type of idea it is. So we just make sure to pace ourselves appropriately.
Okay, so talking about hitting the market, does Orlando Health automatically become a shareholder in any of the new ventures that have been nurtured through the Foundry Framework?
Yeah, that's a great question, and different hospital systems approach that differently. For us, the Foundry program is designed to identify and build Orlando Health's intellectual property. And so it's one of the first discussions we have with innovators is helping them understand why Orlando Health needs to assume ownership of the IP. And it's really just how easy it is for me to put resources and structure behind something. And, it's not really about control. We leave the innovator really in the driver's seat for the project. So it's really to build up our IP portfolio. And then what we do once something is commercialized is we have a very generous royalty sharing approach with the innovators. So they basically get to benefit in the profits after Orlando Health has helped them get to that point.
So how do you approach developing those plans for growth, particularly like go-to-market strategies and those potential external funding requirements?
So it's different for each project. We really try to start with a templated approach, but when we get to certain points, make sure that we are, kind of designing and building and moving each idea along the right way. So medical devices, we have some good, biomedical engineering partners that we work with, that's their niche. They know how to illustrate these ideas, rapid prototype them with 3D printing, run a pilot program, and then get them through the FDA. So a lot of times those processes are already defined based on the partner. So we feel it's really important early in the process to identify who those partners are going to be, and then do our best to just kind of follow the process that they've used that's proven to be successful.
You mentioned earlier on that you typically work in sprints. So have you fully adopted an Agile project management methodology?
We have on some instances. We don't have a set approach, really just because the projects are so different. So the 4 projects that went through the Foundry program in 2019 that are in development right now, we have an iPad app to help patients who've lost their ability to speak in the hospital so it can speak for them based on inputs. We have a program that will, through some software connected to our electronic health record, will help pediatric patients transition into adult care. We have one that it's really a pilot study to test how much we can reduce the risk of infection spreading in certain units by replacing the privacy curtains that are kind of standard fabric curtains with antimicrobial disposable curtains, just to see what the difference is there. And then the 4th one is a medical device built to irrigate wounds in the emergency department, cuts and lacerations and stuff like that. So wildly different projects, completely different work teams, different partners that are helping us build or design all those things. And so again, it's back to making sure we have the right team assembled and the right partners helping us do these things, and then figuring out which approach makes the most sense for that project and that team.
Right. And I feel you're ideally positioned to help them with those go-to-market strategies, because I know that earlier in your career with Orlando Health, you directed digital media.
Yes.
Does your experience with digital marketing influence, or has it influenced how you approach the development of the Foundry?
Yeah, it does. And, I think a lot of people that I talk to say, gosh, your career path has been so strange. But I really feel like it has prepared me for this role, this job. One of the benefits is I always have kind of the branding, product marketing hat or lens that I'm looking through, which isn't always obvious to someone who runs an innovation program, but, just kind of having that lens to look through as we're developing, knowing, how we should position and market these things once they do get to market to help them be successful, even to the point of being able to help with website design and development, video production, to make sure that we are most effectively communicating how these things work. The other thing that's been really integral to our approach is just how much we combine storytelling and effective communication into the innovation process. I think one of the aspects of the Foundry that surprises our innovators is how much we focus on their pitch and how they communicate their idea, the problem it's solving, things like that. I think they feel like it's kind of ancillary. They're ready to get into actually building the product and let's go test this thing. One of the things we help them understand is, you're going to have dozens at least, or probably hundreds of conversations about this product from now until, it gets to market. And you're going to have to talk to all kinds of people about all kinds of things. The more effective you can be at that, the more successful your idea is going to be. And I've seen how infusing storytelling, really powerful storytelling, into that process just helps everything else be that much more impactful and meaningful. And, by the time we get to the end of developing pitches and actually having people practice, you can see the dots start to connect in their head, and they can see that they've become really effective at sharing what their idea can do and what they hope to accomplish.
Well, staying with that digital media background for a second, consumers are increasingly concerned about the potential misuse of personal data, in part because of the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandal. Yet at the same time, we're happy to share data from our Fitbits and Apple Watches if we think that data will support our health and wellness. So working in a healthcare organization under HIPAA, which sets strict rules around the use of patient information, how do you balance HIPAA regulations with innovations in digital data-driven technologies?
It's a great question, and it's something we talk about frequently, and it's something we take very seriously. I feel like every week I see some headline about another hospital system that's sharing data or doing something, and they end up getting into hot water because of how they managed it, or because of how their patients or the public kind of perceives what they're doing. That's another aspect to it too. So kind of on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the project is, we kind of think through what are the inputs that the patient may have here, or what is it going to need to access. And then we make sure that we are talking to everybody internally who needs to have a say in how that's managed, how it's stored, how things are connected to one another. We've got a review process internally for software applications that need to talk to one another, things like that. And in general, I try to steer clear of getting into too much stuff that's HIPAA protected unless we absolutely need to. If there's a way to test something without gathering and storing all those different identifiers, that's the path we try to pursue. But it is kind of a moving target. And, I think people worry about some things too much and don't worry about other things. Like you said, they don't worry about them enough. And so consumers and patients aren't always thinking about every bit of data that they're sharing and where it's going. But it's kind of an ongoing conversation for us.
How do you create and nurture that culture of innovation within such a large organization?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think my goal selfishly is that this program and our team grows continuously over the next few years, just to make sure that we're kind of meeting the demand that our team members have brought forward in terms of ideas that they have. For now, we've kind of had to balance the volume of projects and the type of projects that we take on to make sure that we're doing justice to the ideas that we've taken on, to make sure that they have the budget and support that they need. But over time, I would love to have some kind of parallel work streams that can simultaneously tackle different types of projects. So software and apps have their own work stream to kind of get the attention and support they need, medical devices, so on, and that each of those would kind of have a dedicated team that's continuously reviewing ideas that are brought forward. At some point too, we would love to have a physical space where people can come either just to start whiteboarding and thinking about ideas, bring a team that's working through something, 3D print a prototype, or just, kind of get feedback as they're working on stuff. I think that would really help kind of bring the right kind of traction that we're looking for across the organization. And then, as we grow, it's important that myself and my team continue to just make sure we have a presence at the other hospitals and not be so focused on kind of the main campus. And that's one of the reasons that we do workshops every fall at each of the hospitals, just to make sure that at least a few times a year, people have an opportunity where they work to come sit and talk with us.
And just remind me, how many hospitals are there now in the system?
We have 10 hospitals, and then a number of freestanding emergency departments, number of outpatient facilities, primary care practices, things like that.
Right. And I've seen down by Champions Gate, I've seen the sign, there's something coming there as well.
Lots of new stuff popping up. We've been very busy on that front, so it's exciting.
All right. So working with startups in the Orlando Health Foundry, what has been the most rewarding experience for you so far?
For me, it's sitting down with someone who has an idea, and the most consistent sentence I hear from people is, I just don't know what to do next. They've had this idea sometimes for years, talked to a number of people, and just are kind of paralyzed because they're not sure what to do beyond kind of sketching out what that idea looks like. So being able to help them take a step back and then give them a roadmap to follow step by step, and just seeing the progress happen. The first time someone gets to hold a prototype of their idea, or see the first rendering of what an app is going to look like, the joy and fulfillment that you can see on their face and you can hear in their voice, it is really rewarding. And for them just to know that they're continuing to drive this thing forward, and that's what's going to make it successful, that they kind of stay in the driver's seat, that's really encouraging for me too.
Now, I think for me, it would be a challenge to be seeing all these other people making their ideas manifest. Do you have a little black book somewhere of ideas?
No, and my wife is a pharmacist. She actually has several ideas that she's talked to me about. So at some point, we would love to make those happen. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like just helping everybody else work on their ideas kind of scratches the creative itch that I have. I like to do a lot of different stuff, and so working on the variety of projects that we do and helping people in so many different ways, I feel like is so fulfilling. I have yet to really come up with something completely unique on my own, but at some point.
Well, we talked a little bit about how sometimes a career doesn't appear to be a linear progression necessarily, and yet each previous experience in some way contributes to the next, and perhaps in retrospect you see an arc of some kind.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's been a fun journey so far. I'm anxious to see where it leads.
Great discussion, Mike. Thank you. If our listeners want to learn more about the Orlando Health Foundry, where can they find information?
OrlandoHealth.com/Foundry is our Foundry website, and OrlandoHealth.com/innovation is kind of our landing page for the formal innovation program as a whole.
Mike, thanks very much indeed for joining us on In Clear Focus today. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. What stood out to me from today's discussion with Mike, innovation has really gone from being a nice to have to a necessity in an increasingly complex healthcare landscape. But creating a culture of innovation within Orlando Health has really helped attract and retain talent within the organization. And while concepts may differ wildly, it is possible to develop a framework to ensure efficient, successful exploitation of really life-changing innovation in healthcare. My thanks to Michael Schmidt, Managing Director of Strategic Innovations at Orlando Health. You can find links to the resources we discussed on the In Clear Focus page at bigiagency.com under Insights. Please consider subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you have an Amazon Echo device, you can use the In Clear Focus skill to add the podcast to your flash briefing. Thank you for listening to In Clear Focus, produced by Big Eye. I've been your host, Adrian Tennant. Until next week, goodbye.